What's going on, guys? Welcome into the What's the Deal Sports podcast. We got episode 2 tonight. We had to do a little emergency podcast earlier on today because we had some of the biggest news that's ever dropped in the Philadelphia sports market. Had LeBron James coming over to sign with the Philadelphia 76ers. But outside of that, I had this one planned for about a week out now. We got my guy Mike Patton coming on. He's the host of Touring the AFC South podcast. A guy of many vices, also covers some football in different aspects, Tennessee State, and some other things. I think you have another podcast I saw on there as well, too, right?
Yeah, I have one called Let's Talk HBCUs. I'm probably going to get that one back started again in the fall as well. So, yeah, definitely.
Awesome. And are you in your HBCU alma mater?
Unfortunately, no. But I live in Nashville, Tennessee State. Whenever Tennessee State is alive and well and things are going well over there, the city is a whole different place when that happens. So definitely, if you're a Nashville native, you know Tennessee State, when they're doing well, I mean, the city is a whole different place.
Yes, sir. And actually, the best part about it is I'm a big music rap guy growing up, being 29 years old. So I don't know if you saw the reel that I posted, but one of my favorite on my Mount Rushmore is Juicy J, 3 6 Mafia. So I know Memphis, Tennessee. I know that correlates right to that whole market and everything too. He's I don't know if he's one of the GOATs. He's like the him and Paul and all those guys, Killer Mike, all those guys are the GOATs down there. So definitely had to rep that and everything. But it's glad to have you on the podcast. We've been trying to set this up for quite some time. Two guys that are just very like minded, just grind the football content and everything. You do talk about the AFC South specifically, though. So I ended up going and finding one of my Titans hats. So I had to dust it off a little bit. This is probably from like the early 2000s at some point in time. So when you first started covering football, that was kind of when they switched the divisions around in like 2002. So things, there was obviously expansion teams as well, too. In that regard, you were kind of growing up, and then you started covering football a little bit after that. Before you started really putting a lens on the AFC South itself, what was like your first introduction to like Titans, Jaguars, Colts, and Texans football?
Well, wow. Now, individually, I would say the Colts got to be Peyton Manning versus the Titans. You see that over and over and over again. Of course, being that I like the University of Tennessee in football, Peyton Manning was. And everyone talked about him like he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I was a contrarian. I liked Peyton Manning, but I still felt like T. Martin didn't get enough credit because T. Martin beat Florida. T. Martin won the SEC championship, and T. Martin won the national title. Those are things that Peyton Manning didn't do. So, that's where I was like, But, yeah, definitely can imagine those days and just the Colts trying to get there, the little engine that could, and then they finally got there. But they won in a way that wasn't Peyton Manning like. They won with a running game, a good defense, with pass rushers, defensive backs, all those different things, all those combinations all coming together, as opposed to Peyton Manning putting up all kinds of numbers for them to win. That's one thing.
I feel like also at that time too, with like specifically Colts football, Peyton was kind of like the star of the show, but even when he won with the Denver Broncos, obviously we kind of know how that went, but he had, his growing pains coming into the NFL. He had a season where he threw 33 interceptions early on in his career. You know what I mean? When you throw that, like
his rookie year,
33 that's 2x a 16-game slate. That's a lot. You know what I mean? That is a lot. That's enough for a franchise in today's age to kind of move on from guys. And we've seen a franchise like that in the Colts, have a short leash with a guy they drafted 4th overall that can throw the ball and hit the top of the roof and inside any dome.
Yeah, definitely. You're talking about Mr. Anthony Richardson. And I think his days of being a Colt are just about over. And it's amazing how potential can get you somewhere. It can also amazing how potential can get you out of somewhere. And that's where we're dealing with when it comes to Anthony Richardson. So, it's a cautionary tale. I'll tell you that. It's a cautionary tale.
And it's pretty crazy too. Like a guy like
Now,
him, where
yeah.
Daniel Jones gets another opportunity. He kind of had a similar situation with the Giants, but he actually
Hmm.
had some success, had brought a team to the playoffs. I think a lot of people
Hmm.
really just kind of rewind the tape and look back at that one situation where Anthony Richardson tapped himself out of the game, and that's like seen as like he's a physical specimen at the position, and that's kind of where the disconnect I think lies with a lot of people with him.
Well, some still hang on to that. I would say his teammates really don't think about it very much.
Yeah,
But the biggest thing for him is health wise. He cannot stay healthy.
yeah,
And you have to be healthy to be able to get better in the NFL, to be able to grow in the NFL, to be able to stay in the NFL. He hasn't done those things since his where he is. He is where he is now. Um, let's see. Yeah, it's unfortunate. And of course, Daniel Jones, he's been healthy maybe one time in his entire career. That was the year he got released early from the Giants, and he was playing
yeah.
for the Vikings. Other than that, he's been injured every single year he's played in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to watch that backup quarterback position with Riley Leonard and Anthony Richardson. And if Anthony Richardson does not win it, then it gets even more interesting because do they trade him? Do they release him? And he basically is going to be really, really cheap to pick up if someone is to try to pick him up because his bonus kicks in, I think, during training camp or his a contract clause does. And they would literally be like maybe 1.4 million to
Yeah.
actually, there for him,
As
which
opposed to
which
that
is
top,
that's
like
peanuts.
that fourth overall pick contract that he was on too. And I was actually going to build off that on the flip side of it, where the
Mhm.
Colts would probably make that decision because Riley Leonard's such a more cost control, cheaper option with him being in his second year and not being under that contract. And then if you want to keep Anthony Richardson around, you're kind of messing with the potential and the development of Riley Leonard as a backup quarterback. And you're kind of just holding on to somebody that you know is not really a part of your future.
Yeah, it's just interesting story there, and above all, the most interesting thing there is if they don't do well this year, what happens to Chris Ballard? Because Chris
Yeah.
Ballard has seemingly escaped being fired. I don't know how many times, and
He
it
runs out
seems
of the
like
it's
he's
like the revolving door, and he sneaks out,
yeah,
and then everything else falls out, but he's the one that always makes it out somehow.
right. It's amazing how he is still there with the Indianapolis Colts.
And they even got some of their better players too. I think Kenny Moore, they're one of the best slot
Hmm.
nickels in the entire league, also was asking for a trade too. So it's not all,
Yeah.
rainbows and sunshines over there, but they do, last season they had a lot of momentum. I'm a big running back
Hmm.
guy, like we talked about before the podcast started. I'm from South Jersey, so I think you know where I'm going with this. Jonathan Taylor,
Hmm. Hmm.
legend around here from Salem, not too far around. I used to play Salem, youth football not against him because I'm actually a little bit older than him, but I used to play against Salem youth football and everything. So obviously I'm a
Hmm.
Notre Dame guy as well. So Quentin Nelson, I mean, they have a really good run game. They got some pieces on the defensive side of the ball. They obviously made a gigantic investment in getting Sauce Gardner, but it hasn't really
Hmm.
turned into anything that has, been able to actually make them stick as a mainstay in a division that's been up for grabs for how long?
Yeah, this division has definitely gotten more and more competitive, and that's one thing that a lot of people will look past. This division is really actually it would have had three teams in the playoffs if
Yeah.
the Colts had continued on their path, but unfortunately they didn't. And mentioning the Colts and Kenny Moore not being there, the thing with him is, of course, he got released, but they also had plans to move Justin Wally in there. Justin Wally is a corner from Minnesota that they drafted last year. They were very high on before he tore his ACL in the preseason. So
Yeah.
that's going to be a guy that's probably going to be in the slot to look for to replace Kenny Moore. And then you've got Sauce Gardner on one side and Mooney Ward on the other. So, you've got some defensive backs. Lou Anaromo, he loves his defensive backs. Those are his
Yeah.
babies, as he says.
Yeah. That name isn't my favorite name. He was the former DC for my guys, and he kind of let us down extremely. So, I'm not, that's a little sore spot for me. But yeah, they do have a lot of side on the ball. And I feel like maybe Kenny Moore has been there. It's kind of been a mainstay for them for quite some time. But when you make the trade like you do for Sauce Gardner, it's kind of bold giving up 2 first-round picks for a guy like that. But I mean, at his age and everything, he's a hell of a player for sure.
Definitely is. I mean, he's going to he's actually challenging quarterbacks to throw at him this year, by the way. He
Yeah.
said that in a media scrum in
I also like
Indianapolis.
looking back at drafts too. And when two guys are right neck and neck with each other, and people said Derek Stingley wasn't the Derek Stingley we saw from LSU freshman year, and then he came back to being that Derek Stingley and got that 3 for $90 deal. And then he went in front of Sauce when people thought that was kind of crazy, even though he was doing that in the SEC and Sauce was fire, but he was also, at Cincinnati, a little bit smaller scale of a school. And it's kind of crazy now that they both have found themselves in the AFC South, kind of competing in the same division too. You know what I mean? So I kind of like looking back at drafts because we just mentioned a guy like Anthony Richardson, 4th overall. That was a massive risk for the Colts to take, and it was a massive whiff.
Yeah, definitely was. And you mentioned Derek Stingley Jr. I mean, I put him up there with definitely the top corners in the league. I know Patrick Surtain's got a lot of love from a lot of people, but Derek Stingley Jr. is, just one of the reasons the Houston Texans defense is as incredible as it is. I mean, I like to call them the stuff of nightmares. There's Jason, there's Freddie, there's Michael Myers, and then there's the Houston Texans defense because they cause nightmares for not only the teams, the coaches, and even the fans as well.
Yeah. And I think the most underrated player in the entire NFL, Danielle Hunter. Just unbelievable pass rusher. He's been that since Minnesota. He was like 20 years old when he came into the league. And he is just an absolute, him and Will Anderson on either side of each other just causes some of the worst issues that you never want to see too. They kind of kept themselves afloat a little bit this year in the playoffs. But another guy who I was big on, crazy enough, I had a group chat with some of my friends back in the day where I had somehow predicted that they should go up and make the selection of two of those guys at the top of the draft, Will Anderson and CJ Stroud, and they ended up doing it. And it looks like it's worked out so far. But how do you feel about CJ Stroud? Because I know a lot of people are down on him from this last postseason and all the turnovers that happened. Even though outside of those turnovers, as crazy as it is to say, he was making a lot of good plays and a lot of really good throws in those games, but the turnovers were just overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely the turnovers are overwhelming, but it's a big season for him this year. Of course, he got the 5th-year option picked up, but see, the thing is, Will Anderson Jr. got the big-time contract and the 5th-year option picked up, so it's a little bit different. Of course, he cut the locks off, so people are saying he's a little bit more focused now. I'm like, look, hey, maybe he just wanted a different look. But
great minds think alike. I just chopped my hair off too. I had it for like 10 plus years too, all the way down to like here. So
got you. So it just, to me, the focus is there because he's talking about different things he's doing. Like the workout is more for his arms than just a traditional workout. Drinking in terms of everything, a lot of water. That's basically all he drinks now, changing his entire diet, just all this going into this season, trying to be as focused and as best he possibly can and as lean as he possibly can, and also changing his diet so he can be able to run around a little bit more, which I found that interesting that he lost like 20 pounds this offseason, which, you wouldn't expect that to be a good thing for a quarterback that took a lot of hits behind that O-line. But then again, maybe he's thinking I need to be more mobile. So, with Nick Cali calling the plays, hopefully he's better in his second-year play caller as opposed to how he was as a rookie play caller. Because, give me an example. I was at the Houston-Tennessee game. I'm watching the game. It's 3rd down or 4th down. I can't remember which one. He hands the ball off to Woody Marks to run the ball. I mean, you got Nick Chubb back there, the big physical back, but yet on 3rd and 1, you hand it off to Woody Marks. I don't know what you're thinking to that play. And it's stuff like that happened over the season with him being the offensive coordinator. Hopefully he worked those things out. And hopefully this season he comes in with a little bit more of a rhythm as a play caller as well and a feel.
Yeah, because you can't be too predictable. I mean, obviously, with that being said, my favorite team, the team that I cover freelance-wise and cover on the Paisan Sports podcast, my other podcast that I recorded for last night, the Eagles, I mean, what's coming on 3rd and 4th down and short. You know what I mean? They kind of have made that their staple of their offense, and, teams have not been able to stop it, and that just is what it is. But they also don't have a quarterback. You talk about CJ Stroud. I really like CJ Stroud as a quarterback. I do think I'm not somebody that, toots anybody's whistle when, and doesn't look at some of the issues that there, because last year in the playoffs, it was clear as day what the issue was, him turning the ball over. But I kind of thought too there was a lot of room for him to grow as a player, and I didn't know how much time that would take because he kind of you
Mhm.
could kind of see like the baby fat on him, and there was like a molded clay for him, and that's kind of why some of the other teams weren't really interested in him at the top of the draft to move up, but the Texans found their spot and were able to do it. So ultimately, if it does work out for them and they can look back and they spent 2 or 3 top 5 draft picks on Derek Stingley, CJ Stroud, and Will Anderson, and it leads to them getting deep into the playoffs, I feel like that's a
Mhm.
success for the front office and the GM.
Yeah, it would be. And Nick Caserio is definitely a guy that knows what he wants when he wants to get it. He's like, look, we want hard workers, this, and this. And if you're not that, you're not going to be here very long. He literally
Yeah.
said that at the NFL Combine. I
And he
asked
keeps
him that
poaching. He
question.
keeps poaching all the Eagles safeties too. He keeps trying to take all CJ Gardner Johnson, and he's got Reed Blankenship. He keeps taking away from the Eagles
Mhm.
secondary. But I mean, that defense is legit too. And I think Reed Blankenship. I mean, they already have good safeties, and they pretty much
Mhm.
utilize like 3 safeties in their defense just to begin with in
Mhm.
general too, with their sub packages and everything too. So it's just interesting. But also another interesting thing, since I did bring up the Eagles, you brought up Derek Stingley Jr. and
Mhm.
you brought up another cornerback, Patrick Surtain. And I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you where Devontae Smith, a guy who kind of owns both those dudes a little bit too, where he lies amongst wide receivers in the NFL.
Huh. Okay. Well, Devontae, I like Devontae. I'm not saying he's a terrible wide receiver, folks. Just hear me out. But I don't have him as a top 10 wide receiver. No, I don't. I have him, maybe, you're 15, you 15, you 20 range. That's where I kind of have him at. Not to say he's not a very talented wide receiver, just saying that, being the number one is totally different than being the number two.
Yeah.
And he does make big plays. I get that. But when all the attention is on you, that's when you really separate
Yeah.
yourself and show that you're the guy at wide receiver. So that's what I really, really want to see from Devontae Smith, to see, the lessons he's maybe learned from watching the AJ Brown take on the top cornerback every single game. I want to see how he's kind of progressed in his career, being the number one guy this year.
Yeah, I agree. I know not every guy like travels like, OG Revis Island and guys, play one side of the ball,
Mhm.
this, that, the other, especially like, Richard Sherman's a perfect example of that, where he, covers one side of his field, and then, guys, come into the zone, this, that, the other. But for Devontae too, he's had some moments where when the Eagles got spanked by the Bucks a couple years back, and that's one of their kryptonites in the playoffs. But when they lost to the Bucks, I think it was 31-9 a couple years back when AJ Brown was out. He did have like 5 for 100 plus in that game, but outside of that, the offense looked absolutely horrific. And it seems like at times it's not even, Devontae's at fault when the number one option that is not AJ Brown and Devontae out there together. It kind of seems like Jalen Hurts is the guy that struggles a little bit.
Well, Jalen, I will say this when it comes to Jalen. And I know a lot of people have given him his flack, but the thing with him is, you've got to have a coordinator that has a plan. And
Yeah,
it seems like the couple years where people were looking at him like, what's going on? You had a coordinator that didn't have a plan. And
yeah,
when you had a coordinator that had a plan, like a Kellen Moore, it looks good.
yeah,
When you have one that doesn't, is what you got. Now that's no slight at Jalen Hurts at all. I think Jalen Hurts is a very good leader, a talented quarterback. At times he can pull it down just a little bit too quickly. But I think some of that's on the coordinators, and that goes directly to the head coach, to me, in my opinion, because a couple of those guys, I'm like, I know you like these guys. I know they're your buddies, but nah, I don't think they prepared to be the offensive coordinator. And he
yeah.
found
Like
that
Brian
out and
Johnson,
fired them
perfect
quickly.
example. Brian Johnson.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And the guy
yeah,
last year, he had to go.
yeah. Kevin Patullo. Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's been the issue too. Is where they tried to bring Brian Dable in too, who had a little bit of familiarity, but that obviously didn't work out. But at the end of the day, Jalen's been, we talk about the revolving door offensive coordinator. He's got a new one every single season. So
Mhm.
Nick Sirianni knows what he wants to do as the coach, and he's, obviously gotten the team to 2 different Super Bowls, and people kind of discredit him at times because they feel like he doesn't have the reins of the offense. But when he tries to give more lenience to a guy and allow them to develop in that role as an offense coordinator, it just never works out for the Eagles. It just doesn't.
No, never does. And the thing also he does as well, that I would say, I know he gets flack just like Hurts gets flack, But the thing that Hurts doesn't necessarily talk to the crowd. You see Nick Sirianni turn around, yelling at the crowd, doing this, doing that.
I know we did, but at the end of the day,
the game.
At the end of the day, we did win a Super Bowl. We did end up winning a Super Bowl and producing a Super Bowl after that. But that will also be a viral social media clip in 2026 when it happened in 2024. You know what I mean? And you will still get clowned for it in that moment when things aren't going awry and you're living off that one moment in itself too. So that's what the issue is in itself. But I kind of want to steer things to another AFC South team. It does mesh with a former Eagles coach that did also produce a Super Bowl, Doug Peterson. But I'm actually going to talk about Trevor Lawrence because we talked about Peyton Manning to start the podcast. Trevor Lawrence is one of the most hyped up prospects in the history of the NFL, and it just hasn't gotten to that exact point yet, too. Like C.J. Stroud, we kind of knew he had a lot of talent, but at Ohio State, we're like, he's throwing to top flight wide receiver. I mean, how many top flight wide receivers were on that roster, just littered all over the place. It's just like how back in the day when Justin Jefferson was coming out of LSU, everybody's like, oh, he's a slot receiver. And then you put on the tape versus Florida, first play of the game, and he's running down the sidelines on the outside, and he's just mossing Florida defensive backs that are going in the first round every single year. But as for Trevor Lawrence himself, it just hasn't cultivated to exactly what the Jaguars have thought, and he's had some moments. Obviously, he had the moment with the comeback in the playoffs versus the Chargers. But what do you think it will take for the Jaguars to finally get over the hump and actually, because they seem like a team that's been scratching at the bit to take over this division. They just have not gotten over that hump to be able to make it happen.
Well, to me, it's going to be consistency, especially at the quarterback position. Trevor Lawrence has been Mr. Inconsistency throughout his entire career. Now, of course, I'm scratching his first year because that was Urban Meyer, and he had his own issues to begin with. But, after that, you had the Doug Peterson year, and then he got hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. They just need him to be like this, straight across, instead of up, down, up, down, up, down. If he's more consistent there, that means the offense flows better. And I will say, he does have the best wide receiver core in the AFC South with Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas Jr. You got Parker Washington, who was a 1,000-yard receiver that no one was thinking about.
Punt returner, one of the most underrated players right now in the NFL.
Then you got at the number 4 wide receiver, just to throw him in, you got Travis Hunter. So, I mean, you definitely have a really, really talented wide receiver core there. But I'm very interested to see what the consistency can be, not only with Trevor Lawrence, but the running game. The running game started off really, really well with Travis Etienne and that offensive line. And then all of a sudden, after the Chiefs game, it just never reappeared, which probably one of the reasons, I guess, that Etienne's not there. But now they have Bashul Tootin that actually is going to be the guy.
Shout out to Paulsboro, another South Jersey produces running backs on repeat for some reason.
Yeah, definitely him. And then Chris Rodriguez is another guy. He actually played college ball for Liam Cohen at Kentucky. So that was the connection there. So, just going to be interesting to see if they can get consistency out of the running game and consistency out of Trevor Lawrence. And then that defense, big thing there, they created a lot of turnovers last season. Can they be a solid defense this year? Because a lot of times when teams create a lot of turnovers the previous year, the next year, they're trying to get back to that turnover level, but it doesn't always work out, and then the defense takes a hit. So that'll be something to watch as well when it comes to the Jaguars.
And they also had that tight end that was a rookie last season. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he was very productive and actually scored a decent amount of touchdowns for them as well, too. So he's another good option for them. I think I'm drawing a blank completely on his name for some reason. He was like a 3rd or 4th round pick. But what do you?
I'm having a moment too.
What do you think the Jaguars should do with Travis Hunter? Like, do you think it's actually realistic for him to play both sides of the ball, or do you think he should pick one, or what should that one be?
Honestly, I think he should play more defensively. I am intrigued by him playing both sides of the ball. That is very intriguing. However, ultimately, they need him more defensively. If you look at their defensive back room, they have Jordan Lewis, they have Jerrion Jones, they have Buster Brown there, Monteric Buster Brown, by the way. I know his whole name too. But, they have those guys over there at defensive back. None of those guys are a number 1 corner. But Travis Hunter was drafted to be that guy. So why not let him be that guy? And then on offense, they don't need him as much at wide receiver room because with the trade for Jacoby Myers, that just filled out their wide receiver room, and also the emergence of Parker Washington. So, they need him more to be a defensive back, and I think it's going to be interesting just to watch the skills develop and just the instincts take over when it comes to Travis Hunter as a defensive back more this season, which, by the way, he's been visiting the weight room. He looks definitely like a different person this season.
And I kind of saw like glimpses too. He kind of is one of those guys that kind of plays in and out of phase too, and he kind of jumps routes at times too. But I wasn't the biggest believer. I thought the athleticism was unbelievable of Christian Gonzalez, but I didn't know if exactly he could play in mesh with receivers in the NFL. And, he's one of the best already corners in the league. And I think that's exactly what the track record of what Travis Hunter could turn into could be as well if he actually just focuses on that side of the ball. But it is undeniable his ball skills. He doesn't even run routes correctly. He just kind of goes out there, kind of just runs backyard football. Then he can just jump up and just catch the ball over pretty much anybody in the NFL. So there is the element to where if Trevor Lawrence is struggling in a game and you need a little pickup on offense, it's going to be hard not to put Travis Hunter on the field and try to see what he can do out there too.
Correct. It's going to be fun to watch. Going to be fun to watch. Just what happens.
Yes. Especially
now I will tell you
in division too, real quickly, just like in division, if we get like a matchup where Travis is like Derek Stingley or Sauce Gardner, you know what I mean? Sign me up for that.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I was going to say one other matchup I'm looking forward to that no one probably is thinking about, but I always tend to bring up is Liam Cohen versus Robert Saleh. Now, for those that don't remember that matchup and why I'm bringing up two coaches, look back at the game, the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the San Francisco 49ers. Now, during that week, Robert Saleh had a lot of talk about, the Jaguars and paying attention to things and signs and all those different things, whatever, right? Game happens, Jaguars win. Of course, like, keep in mind here, Robert Saleh shaking hands, things like that, whatever. And he's, and Liam Cohen is turned away from him and to Robert Saleh's back is to him. Then he yells at him to keep his name out of his, some expletives mouth. So Robert Saleh hears this, turns around, and he says something very nice to Mr. Liam Cohen. And of course, he has the hold me back moment Liam Cohen does, but I don't think anybody needed to do that for Mr. Robert Saleh. So these two teams facing each other and these two coaches, boy, oh boy, it just adds to the lore of the Titans versus Jaguars, which the Jaguars have still not forgotten about the 99-2000 season where they had 3 losses. All 3 losses were to the Tennessee Titans, 2 in the regular season and 1 in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah. I was going to say that too. And that was when they were like an expansion team just getting into the NFL, and they just came hot into the NFL and they were right in there, you know what I mean? And then kind of found themselves in a position where they probably didn't expect to. I actually had a Mark Brunell jersey back in the day too, for some other Jags jersey that I had too, the lefty. But yeah, it kind of seems like when you were talking about that too, it reminded me because I grew up, I told you my connection with Joe Flacco. So I did root for the Ravens, and I still do root for the Ravens. I'm a big Lamar guy. My dad runs the triple option in high school in New Jersey. So you put Lamar Jackson in the triple option offense. He's the greatest quarterback in the history of football. You know what I mean? There's nobody, him and Michael Vick, it's hand in hand, or Cam Newton. But in that regard, it kind of seems like offense and defensive coaches just hate each other. Like, remember when the Ravens were pushing for that 100-yard rushing mark total to try and compile it, and then Jim Schwartz, it was Ravens versus the Lions, and Jim Schwartz was not having it, and that was when that handshake kind of went south in Detroit too. So it kind of seems like offense and defensive coaches just love beefing with each other, and there's just like such a respect of, I'm an offensive guy, you're a defensive guy, and it's a numerator and denominator, and there's something that's just going to boil over at some point. And the funny part is they might both be working for an organization as the offense and defensive coordinator if they lose their jobs at some point down the line, and then they got to make amends. So
right. The funny part also is you got to mention the San Francisco 49ers versus the Detroit Lions too, where that handshake, and I guess he felt like he smacked him on the back too hard. He's running up on Jim Harbaugh. That was hilarious too.
Yeah, no, that's why I love NFL films. They get all the behind the scenes stuff, and they show us all that too. And that's why I love that. NFL Red Zone does a great job of covering all that stuff too, in midst of all the chaos that goes on throughout an NFL Sunday. And then you get a glimpse of that, and you're like trying to pay attention to your fantasy football team. You're like, whose coach is beefing with who? You know what I mean? So it's always popcorn TV when that happens. But we haven't even really expanded too much on the team that you kind of cover the most with the Titans. I remember I sent you a question not too long ago for one of your podcasts asking about Carnell Tate. Ended up being the first wide receiver drafted. The team that I root for, the Eagles, obviously took a wide receiver in the first round, and that was kind of influx of what they were going to do at that position. And they ended up moving on from a former Titan in A.J. Brown. But as for the Titans, how do you think that offense is looking going into another year of Cam Ward? And then now he has a guy that people don't believe could possibly be a number one wide receiver. And I think that's what I asked you. Can Carnell Tate actually grow into a number one wide receiver?
Yeah, I definitely think he can grow into a wide receiver, a number one wide receiver. I definitely think this offense is still maturing and growing and learning because, not everything is going to be made or known overnight. Of course, this is an offense that is not very known in the NFL because, it's not a derivative of the McVay and Shanahan offense. It's something all its own. So that's takes some time for people to learn, like, a Calvin Ridley, Chim DK, Alec Iomanner. Then you got your tight ends, you got Gunnar Helm. But you did bring in some Giants guys to actually help out. Wan'Dale Robinson, a tight end from the Giants as well is with was with Tennessee as well. And also you can throw in there the veteran center, Austin Slotman, too. So, it's going to take.
And they've invested in that offensive line a lot, too, and J.C. Latham, and they also Peter Skoronski a couple years back, too. So they've been putting the pieces and the chips in place, but you have to get that quarterback, and they got that quarterback. And that dude, when he, reminiscent, it kind of seems like he has a little bit of Steve McNair in him a little bit. It kind of seems like there is a little bit of aspect of like that freestyle ball, and then he'll just throw an absolute dart out of nowhere, and it's just like one of the greatest throws you've ever seen. Like,
yeah, I'll tell you this. Watching Cam Ward and paying attention to Cam Ward, he is a guy that he is a competitor at all times.
Yeah.
He does not like to lose. I was at the infamous press conference in Houston where he basically said they were donkeys on offense.
Yeah.
Definitely a guy that's very, very competitive. But, quiet as it's kept, he finished the season with 10 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a couple rushing touchdowns. So it wasn't like he didn't progress as the season went on. He did. He actually got better. And, people are kind of poo-pooing his first season in the NFL, but he actually grew and got better. And I expect him to be even better under Brian Daboll because Brian Daboll is going to coach him hard, which Cam Ward, is a throwback player. He likes to be coached hard. He wants to be coached hard. He's a guy that shows up at 5:30 in the morning and you have to kick him out of the facility. Yeah. He brings all his wide receivers there with him at 5:30 in the morning to watch tape and things like that. So he does all the things, kind of like Robert Saleh says, he does all the things to be a great quarterback. So
what do you think about them moving on from the tight end, though? Because I thought the tight end was really – I thought he was really, really good. And he would fit that offense pretty well. But I was kind of flabbergasted a little bit by that. I'm not saying like, he's a top flight tight end at this moment, but the progression of him and Cam Ward together, I thought they could really attack the seams on defenses and keep people on their toes with Wan'Dale Robinson out of the slot, Carnell Tate, and have a really good balance to the offense that they would have kept him in the mix.
Well, it would have been nice for him to be here, but I kind of had the feeling he wasn't going to be back when after the season, literally like the game wasn't even really all the way over. Like, you see the message about thanking Nashville. So I was like, oh yeah, he's definitely not coming back. But Chig is a guy that gets every ounce of every play in terms of receptions. Prime example, it's 4th and 1. They run a pass pattern to him. He catches it. He goes down the sideline, breaks 2 tackles, cuts back, and then scores on it from like 50 yards out.
Yeah.
That
it reminds me, who he reminds me of?
6 yards.
He reminds me of the old Maryland tight end from back in the day, Vernon Davis. He's got a little bit of Vernon Davis aspect to him.
Well, he definitely is. He's a Maryland tight end, by the way. Anyway, so he kind of a lot of people kind of liken him to him, but I liken him to Jonnu Smith, the former Tennessee Titan. That's why I kind of liken him to. But I think he's just a little bit more physical, and he finishes his runs just a little bit better than Jonnu Smith ever did. So, I would say he would have probably fit the offense with the Tennessee Titans. However, I kind of during the season kind of figured he probably would not be back this season, and that came to fruition when he signed with the Washington Commanders, who is a team that the Titans will face this season.
Yeah. And what do you think it's going to take for the Titans defense to really get back up to par of where they need to be as well? Because I feel like they kind of had an issue with the passing defense for quite some time. They really haven't had the pass rushers that have made the impact that they need them to. And they were putting up numbers a couple years back where they were giving up like 36 passing touchdowns a year, which is completely unacceptable in today's NFL. That's a recipe for you to just get picked apart and lose games in the National Football League.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a lot for them to get back, but also they've made the right strides. They went out and got a tag team partner for Jeffrey Simmons and John Franklin Myers. Now that's going to be a big addition. Then you've got a bunch of edge guys that they signed or traded for, and they're probably about 8 to 10 deep up front. Given they may cut some people. So that's the thing that Robert Saleh wants to do. He wants to rotate people, keep them fresh. That way, when it hits the fourth quarter, Jeffrey Simmons is fresh, John Franklin Myers is fresh, and the offensive line is huffing and puffing.
And the Colts, if the Colts have the grip on the AFC South, you know what's happening in the fourth quarter. Jonathan Taylor's going to be running the rock down your throat with Quentin Nelson, pulling, and it's going to be a long, long day for you if you can't have fresh bodies out there.
Right. And the other thing I would say they did well this offseason, they revamped the cornerback room. The cornerback room last season, they were on like their 5th corner starting. They were picking guys up off the scrap heap.
That's what I was saying too when I alluded to the passing touchdown numbers. That was like back when they were actually competitive, like at the top of the conference. But it's been a trickle-down issue for quite some time, to the point where they're turning to guys off the street, off the practice squad, that have to come in big spots. And I know they're not exactly, they're going through, when you pick a number one quarterback, obviously, you're not expecting to go, even though we've seen teams like Nick Bosa with the 49ers go right to the Super Bowl. We've seen Jaden Daniels, the year he gets drafted 2nd overall, go right to the NFC Championship. Jamar Chase was in the Super Bowl when he got drafted 5th overall, but I don't think that was expected of Cam Ward. But you do kind of want to see a progression, something that the offense can match the defense, but it just hasn't really been that with all the investments that they put into the offense.
Yeah, well, they put some investment in offense. You mentioned J.C. Latham earlier. He actually, the news about him is he's starting the season on the PUP list, so that's not necessarily a good sign. But when you switch over to the defensive side of the ball, the Titans went out and got 3 corners that are all 6'1" and above. That's Alontae Taylor from the Saints, Cardinal Flott from the Giants, and Joshua Williams from the Kansas City Chiefs, which actually today they signed another cornerback from the Kansas City Chiefs as well. But the big thing that I got here is they want to be bigger at that position. They want to be versatile at that position, because Alontae Taylor is going to play outside. That's where he's going to be mostly played, but he's going to slide some inside too. So that's going to be interesting just to watch how much he's able to do that over the incumbent at that nickel position, which is Marcus Williams, I believe, that played it last year for the Titans. And they really like him as well. He's a pretty good sized corner. He's physical, sticks his head in there and makes some plays. So that cornerback room definitely got revamped, and I do like what they've done to the safety position, which I will tell you, one guy to watch in that position for this season, Kevin Winston Jr. Watch out for that
Penn
kid.
Penn State guy.
Yeah, watch out for him. He's fully healthy. To me, that's not to say he wasn't fully healthy last season, but he's another year removed from an ACL injury, which, usually a lot of people will tell you that the second year somebody is away from a ACL injury is when you get to really see the real them again.
Yeah. No, I agree. I had a pretty bad knee injury back in the day myself, came back a little bit early. It was funny. My first tackle coming back from an ACL injury was actually the 4th round pick for the Jaguars back in the day, and Raquel Armstead. That's another South Jersey running back guy too. So that was actually of my era too. And that was from Millville, when they had a bunch of crazy dudes and they were top ranked in New Jersey. But I kind of think they also needed a little bit of an identity on that side of the ball too. A guy that keeps striking my brain too. Obviously Albert Haynesworth back in the day, but I remember Keith Bullock flying sideline to sideline. He was kind of part of that like original wave of like sub backers that can kind of do a little bit of everything, and was really, really good. I think they would benefit a lot if they got somebody like that in the middle of the defense that could
they have it. They have it actually, and 2 guys potentially that could be that. Anthony Hill Jr., they drafted him out of the University of Texas. I love
Anthony Hill Jr., Clemson.
Awesome guy. And then also I would say that they do have Cedric Gray, guy last year.
Yeah, I like Cedric Gray.
100+ tackles.
He went pretty. Both of those dudes went late. I mean, preseason, Peter Woods and Anthony Hill Jr. were hyped up from Clemson to be 2 top 10 picks, and then they kind of both fell completely out of the mix there too. And then Cedric Gray, I remember in the draft with Jeremiah Trotter Jr., he kind of fell all the way down too. And a lot of people were really, really high on him, saying that he should be a pretty high day 2 pick, and he just didn't go exactly there. But yeah, I think somebody has to step up. It just sucks when you look back at some of the previous investments, because the ownership obviously doesn't make too much turnover in the league. And it's like when you had guys like Rashaan Evans back in the day, you know what I mean, where you finally do muster up the courage to go draft that position high up, and it just doesn't work out for you. You kind of get a little bit kind of zealous to what you want to do at that position and how you want to handle it. But we see guys, especially at that position, where you can find them wherever. The Eagles actually just got a guy, Deontay Lawson, a undrafted guy from Alabama that had played with Jahad Campbell from Alabama, like I said. And he's somebody that could easily fill in if they need him too. So, linebackers, I wouldn't say they grow on trees or anything like that, but you can find serviceable linebackers that can really make an impact at different spots. In today's NFL, I mean, you got guys. Notre Dame guy, I thought he should have been a top 3 pick when he came out. Kyle Hamilton, you can put that dude in the middle of your you put that dude, and you might be able to put that dude as an edge rusher, and he would be able to get Jamal Adams type sack numbers with like 7 a season. You know what I mean? That's how good that dude is. But that's kind of what today is. Like a 6'3", 4" Cam Chancellor type might be like one of your main backers. But that's what kind of scares me about the Eagles this season. Talked about it last night. Is they just moved on from Nakobe Dean. I kind of feel like teams might try to attack the Eagles with their sub backers being Jahad Campbell and Zach Bond being kind of a little bit undersized to the norm, and that, some of the more physical offensive lines can go out and get after those guys. So it's kind of, you got to pick here or there how you want to operate your defense and your offense in today's NFL, and just completely changes. But the uniqueness of the situation is, like you said, the originality of the Titans offense.
Yeah, definitely is going to be interesting to watch. And like you mentioned, Jahad Campbell, I think he equipped himself really, really well last year when he was in there in place of Nakobe Dean. I think he's going to be just fine. As far as Anthony Hill Jr., he actually was University of Texas, by the way.
That's my fault.
Yeah. Him and Gunnar Helm were college teammates. So, and he's
a guy. Gunnar Helm. Yeah, I forgot they had Gunnar Helm too. I like Gunnar Helm too.
Yeah.
He was, he kind of was in that. He was in that realm of the Delp dude from Georgia. I kind of thought those two dudes were very underrated. Yep. Yeah, I thought those two dudes were very underrated. And those are the type of guys where, like, you talk about 2 teams, Texas and Georgia. It's kind of like Ohio State, where, Carnell Tate, he can't be a number 1 wide receiver. JSN can't be a number 1 wide receiver. All these guys. And then it's because they got 5-star recruits all littered all over the roster, and they just don't get their opportunity. Then they come to the NFL and they're in an opportunity where they're the guy, and they're making numerous Pro Bowls and some of the best players at their possession in the league.
Right. And to me, just looking at just all these different players, all these different organizations, or these different colleges, I should say, that are putting players in the NFL, like the Washingtons, like the Ohio States, like the Texases and teams like that. I think that the competition, and like Carnell Tate said, the competition, and you got to be your best every single day. And that's what he ends up being, his best every single day at that position. So that's why those players like a Jackson Smith and Jigba and Buka, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's still got to get there. But and then maybe a Carnell Tate. That's why those guys are so good when they hit the NFL, because they've been basically having to be their best for a long time at Ohio State.
Yeah, exactly. Especially it's like, iron sharpens iron. Derek Stingley Jr. has to go against Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase every single day in practice. He might have a down season because he's tired from trying to cover 2 of the best wide receivers in all of football. And then now, he has a down sophomore season, this, that, the other. Oh, he's not as good. He gets drafted in front of Sauce. And then, he gets 3 for 90, and he's one of the best players at his position in the league. And he's going to possibly on track to, maybe someday get a Canton jacket. I mean, if he keeps going the way he's going, he's matching up with some of these dudes in the NFL. This is the wide receiver era that we're in. Wide receivers are now getting paid like former quarterbacks back in the day, then this is, the value of the cornerback position is pretty much top 5 in importance in the entire NFL. But who do you think is the sleeper of the 2026-2027 season? I kind of have a team in mind myself. You kind of mentioned one of the players on the roster. That gives you a little bit of hint of what I am at, but I'm not trying to spur your thought here. But who do you think is a sleeper overall team wise outside of the Titans? Because I know you could easily go with the sophomore leap for Cam Ward. That's the answer that everybody loves to go with. Well, I saw it with my Philadelphia Eagles with Carson Wentz, even though it didn't pan out with him winning the Super Bowl exactly himself. But we usually see a sophomore leap with quarterbacks. But who do you think is a team that can really climb up the ranks this upcoming season?
And taking a look at just a few different teams around the league. Now, I know this isn't a team that, traditionally you look at, but they're gonna be good, or you would look at and say, okay, but this is a team that everyone expected to be good last year, but they weren't as good. But I think with new energy at their head coach position, I think they'll be better this year, and they'll be better than advertised. That some think he would have he and this team will be. That's Baltimore Ravens. That's the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah. I don't think a lot of people are talking about them, but I'm like, Lamar hasn't slipped. I don't know why players voted him down like 30, 40 spots or whatever. That's insane to me. Yeah. But you still have Derrick Henry. You still have Lamar Jackson. You have Jesse Mentor, who is not a bad defensive coordinator at all. And you have all those pieces on that defense. So to me, I think the Baltimore Ravens are a team not a lot of people are talking about. To be honest, a lot of people have questions
what I
about
think the issue with the Baltimore Ravens is? I think a lot of people – I'm a big John Harbaugh guy, obviously. 2-2 with Joe Flacco. They came in at the same time, and I was rooting for the Ravens hard at that time. I had the pleasure to, spend a lot of time at M&T Bank Stadium growing up and everything like that, and have a lot of experiences with the Ravens growing up. But outside of that, I think a lot of people there's a lot of distaste for them holding on to Harbaugh for a little bit too long. And then the guy that they let leave, their DC, goes and wins the Super Bowl in his second season in Seattle. That's a tough one. That's a tough pill to swallow. That is a very tough pill to swallow too, especially when you're a team like the Ravens that a lot of people like to compare Lamar and Joe to each other, and Lamar is putting up MVPs, but Joe, at the end of the day, put up a Super Bowl MVP, which is a little bit more important to the overall grand scheme of things as opposed to just regular season awards. As much as I love Lamar, I think Lamar is undoubtedly one of the most talented players in the entire league. And if he's completely healthy, if they can get everything going, one of the names that you didn't mention there, I know you're obviously on the radar with him. I think Zay Flowers is one of the most underrated players in the entire NFL. And if they can get like a true receiving option, not a guy like Rashad Bateman, but somebody that can really, really make an impact, not a old DeAndre Hopkins. I know with Tennessee, you might have dealt with that a little bit too, but more somebody on the younger side that can really contribute in the receiving game. I think they can make an impact. I like the dude Lane that they drafted this season. And I think he can make an impact too, but they have tight ends. They just lost a tight end. They just lost a coach. They're going to be changing things over, but I do like the Ravens and what they stand for, but it kind of seems like they've had the same roster and they're just kind of staying here, and what's going to tilt the seesaw to get them up and actually bring and raise the bar for themselves.
I think defensively, I think that'll be the difference this season. I think the addition of Trey Hendrickson is going to help. I still think it was really strange, the trade for Max Crosby that wasn't, but I digress. But
that's happened. That's not the only time it's happened with the Ravens. They got Elvis Dumerville back in the day from like a failed fax machine issue. So
right. It's wild, man. It's wild.
Yeah. But one of the teams I was kind of hinting at as a sleeper, as a Notre Dame guy, they drafted him 3rd overall. I think he's completely electric. One of the, somebody that just has completely taken football by storm. Jeremiah Love. You mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr. They got the other receiver too. I'm drawing a blank on his last name. Michael is his first name too, who's really, really productive. That makes a lot of plays for them. Big body guy on the outside too.
I'm trying to think myself.
Yeah, I'm forgetting the dude's name. I got to look it up real quick. But they also have Trey McBride. That offense looks pretty good. Don't really have a quarterback. They got Jacoby Brissett, who can handle business for a little bit. I'm not a big Carson Beck guy myself, but
me either.
I don't know. I kind of like what Arizona has going on. I was kind of saying it makes sense for Arizona to be the team to maybe call up the Indianapolis Colts and ask what's going on with Anthony Richardson and try to just get the most juiced up Madden-like offense they can possibly put out there with just absolute physical specimens and just see what happens.
I could see them maybe making that would be an Arizona move. That would be an Arizona move for that to happen. But I kind of am interested. Well, I was interested in seeing what the Rams would do at their backup quarterback position. But then again, they drafted Ty Simpson, so that's
I
all
was
over.
talking about that last night too. I was asking if Stetson Bennett was still on the roster too, if it ever came
He's
down
still
to
out
it.
there.
Yeah, he's still on there. I know they're a team that would hold 3 quarterbacks, not 4, but you obviously had the emergency leverage because of the 49ers, the NFC Championship Eagles situation from back in the day that kind of changed the entire fold of everything like that. But I mean, yeah, outside of if Matt Stafford goes down, if Aaron Donald comes back, it's a wrap. It's a wrap.
He's working
I
out
think
the
they'll be
facility.
minus 300 on the betting lines for them to win the Super Bowl. That's how good that team will be. The only thing that could really stop them is if Ty Simpson has to come in and really try to make things happen if Matt Stafford were to go down. But if Matt Stafford's healthy and Aaron Donald comes back with Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett, that's just I don't have words for that. I just don't have words for that. And Trent McDuffie on top of it. Like I just don't have words for that. That just kind of seems like how they had Aaron, Vaughn, and Jalen Ramsey on that Super Bowl team a couple years back.
By the way, Jalen Ramsey from Middle Tennessee area. He actually played for my dad. He was his quarterback for when we were 6 years old.
No way.
So
you don't understand. I
that
told you about
time.
my love for Leonard Fournette. It's the same with Jalen Ramsey. I tell people all the time, Jalen Ramsey is one of the 10 greatest defensive backs, not cornerbacks, defensive backs in the history of the NFL. And with Jalen Ramsey, I remember this past season, they moved him to safety with the Steelers for a game, and he just caused absolute mass hysteria the entire game. Whether he's hit sticking you, he was matching up with Antonio Brown as a rookie, picking off Big Ben 2 times in the end zone, doing Spider-Man moves to catch up with Antonio Brown and making interceptions. I mean, Jalen Ramsey is just one of the all-time greats, in my opinion.
I've met him. I'm actually he went to the same high school I did too, by the way.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm a massive Jalen Ramsey.
Derek Barnett did too. Him and Derek Barnett were teammates in high
That's
school.
a name that kind of hits a soft spot for me as well too. I heard about him being the next, he was supposed to be the next like Terrell Suggs and everything for the Eagles and all that stuff, and didn't exactly live up to the thing. But he is a part of one of the biggest plays in the Eagles organization's history of the sack fumble and the greatest player of all time. So got to salute him there. Yeah. And he's had a pretty good career with the Tech. Is he still on the Texans roster?
That's a question mark right now. And also I'll mention another player. Another player that went to my high school, Dawson Knox, tight end for the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, so there's I could probably sit here and name players all day. Like if you go to the NBA, Darius Garland.
Darius Garland.
Yeah.
That's Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah, he went to my he went to my high school as well. So I mean, I could sit here all day and talk about players that went to my high school, but yeah.
Yeah, I've competed against some great athletes too. I remember when I was a sophomore, we played against Eli Apple, played against Tom Flacco too, Joe Flacco's little brother, and Tom Flacco won AA Offensive Player of the Year at Towson. Was on the Western Michigan Corey Davis team, so I know that hits in a little bit for you. So he was teammates with Corey Davis back in the day at Western Michigan when they had that outrageous run. But Eli Apple is from Eastern in South Jersey, and he actually made one of the most ridiculous high school plays I've ever seen. We ran the triple option, and we kind of snuck them out on a play action pass, and there was only like 1 or 2 routes on the entire field, and it wasn't even like they were running zone coverage, and they threw the ball down the field on like a post, and we kind of caught them, and the guy on our team's running for a touchdown, and he comes from the opposite side of the field where he had fell down and strips the ball out at the 1 yard line. Just absolutely ridiculous. And he's just I had a video on like my Instagram way back in the day. So there's some dogs all over too. But yeah, there's the pipelines, especially down south, just hit different. Like some of the guys that I can mention, obviously Joe Flacco here, big time, but Jalen Ramsey just as big time. You know what I mean? We're talking about 2 Hall of Fame level players right there.
Yeah. I've actually had his dad on my show. His dad and who else is dad? God, I cannot remember. Micah's dad too.
Oh yeah, Micah. Yeah. I was just hoping that Micah would, come over and show the actual Philadelphia love that he has, but obviously it didn't work out that way. We all only hate him. I hope if his dad is for whatever risk listening, because you had the connection with him. Michael, we only hate you because you're a Dallas Cowboy. That was the only time we hated you. We don't actually hate you. Like, we don't hate you. We only hated you because you were on the Cowboys. He knows that too. Just, that clause that was in the contract, Jerry just could not give Howie that. Just, he was not going to allow that to happen. He put that clause in the contract on purpose just to make sure. And like, Jerry's just out there. If the one last thing that he does on earth, it's going to prevent Micah Parsons from going to be a Philadelphia Eagle. That's going to be the last thing that he's going to, do on planet Earth, if that's what he is capable of doing. So, but if we look about the landscape of the young quarterbacks in the NFL, what do you think the young quarterbacks, we talked about Cam Ward, we talked about some of the other guys that are a little bit more established in the league that just can't get over the hump. Who are some guys do you think are on the rise and like interesting situations? One that I kind of want to hint towards is the Minnesota situation where they get a former number 1 overall pick and they're still trying to deal with JJ there as well.
Yeah, well, speaking on young quarterbacks, I would say Tyler Show is one that people kind of looked over. I got to see him in person facing the Tennessee Titans. He brought the team back from after halftime, and he did his thing. I mean, he was dealing. He was smart with the football. Made the necessary plays to win the game. And I was like, okay, cool. Somebody to watch, even though he's like 105 years old in his second year. But
had all those knee injuries too. I remember Todd McShay was talking him up, and I love Todd McShay. I kind of look up to Todd McShay in that sense, one of the best at what he does. And he was really talking him up. And I was like, I just can't get behind a guy that's 26 years old with all these knee injuries. It kind of just seemed like he was even older than Michael Penix Jr., who had similar, knee evaluations too. You know what I mean? And we kind of saw how that's worked out, but they didn't spend the first on him. They didn't spend the 9th overall pick on him. You know what I mean? They spent the 41st overall pick in the second round that one year. And I mean, at this point in time, it's just going to be interesting because when he grows into that next contract, you don't have the 5-year leverage on him. So he's going to have to get a deal pretty early. And if he keeps progressing and he's busting into his athletic prime already at that age, he might command a decent sized contract pretty early into his NFL career.
Right. He definitely might. And then you mentioned the Minnesota conundrum. I'm gonna call it a conundrum.
Yeah.
To me, JJ McCarthy, I never was very high on him coming out of college because at the clutch moments, what is he doing? He's handing the football off. He's not making a big time throw. So I never saw what Minnesota saw in him. Now they're finally seeing what I saw in him. And to me, it's going to end up looking like a wasted draft pick. And I think Kyler Murray is going to be the thing that they need. And, I know people will talk about him running around and all those different things, but you forget Kyler Murray has a hose on him. He can throw that football deep.
I tell people you can't compare him to other guys that were kind of like, first overall picks bust. This is the only athlete in the history of sports to be drafted in the top 10 of 2 different pro leagues and, the main 4s. And a top 9, he was drafted 9th in the MLB and first overall in the NFL. And the risk that the Cardinals took originally, they made that massive whiff with the 10th overall pick and Josh Rosen the year before. Some of the guys that went after that, Lamar Jackson, who the Eagles traded, that pick out of that spot to be able to give the Ravens that spot. But they made that leap. But Kyler Murray is one of the most athletic athletes on planet Earth.
Yeah, he just looks like I've heard of Amani Jones and other people talk about him, and he looks like a little toddler just running around out there. But he's just so fast running around out there. But
I know
he just has some of the strangest injuries, and he also, got to put the Call of Duty down sometimes. Too, getting that playbook. So that'll be something to watch as well in Minnesota.
Hopefully, it's just not a Jamarcus Russell situation where they ask him if he's watching tape and it's like blank tapes out there and stuff like that. And but I think he kind of also plays into that stuff now as well, and he's a lot more refined in his game. I know it didn't work out in Arizona, but I don't know. It would be quite a story if, JJ actually makes it back and does his thing. And then say mid-season, the Cardinals are looking for a quarterback and they send a 3rd or 4th round pick back for Kyler. And that offense gets going with Marvin. The dude I forgot about that I was telling you, Michael Wilson was making lots of plays last season. He was making lots of plays last season. You got Trey McBride. You got Jeremiah Love. You still got they still have what's his name in the backfield as well too. Connor. Yeah, they still have the former Steelers running
And
back
then
too as well.
also,
So.
then you got the other guy that was running with Bijan
The
Robinson
North
last year.
Carolina
He's
kid
up there.
too, right?
Not North Carolina. I don't think he's North Carolina kid. He's from God, where is he from? I think he's from BYU. He was the backup running back for Bijan Robinson last year. And I cannot remember what his name is, but he got drafted. He got
Oh,
signed
yeah,
by
yeah,
them,
yeah.
and then he got
They have that other kid too. That they still have the North Carolina kid too, who's like a scat back. But yeah, they have Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier.
Yep, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah.
There
So
you go.
I mean, they got two thumpers. They got one of the most electric guys. We want to talk about that run in the game before the national championship. I'm a massive Notre Dame fan. So that run before the national championship, that 5-yard run where Jeremiah Love breaks 5 tackles and he's breaking, tackles from Abdul Carter and everybody. I think Kevin Winston might even been on that play back in the day too. And he's just breaking tackles from literally everybody in the book and getting into the end zone. I mean, that offense can look, pretty good. And you still got guys like Josh Sweat, my, former Philadelphia Eagle, who's pretty decent player, was the number 1 overall ranked high school player coming out of his class back in the day. So, he taps into that when he wants to at times, and he looks like one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL. So I don't know. I think the Cardinals are a team to beware of, but at the end of the day, when you look at the NFC West, I mean, that's arguably the toughest division in all of football.
Correct. It is. I mean, you got the Rams, the 49ers, and the
because we talk about the AFC South, and it's kind of like everybody is like a 9 to 10 threshold win team. We talk about the NFC West, and we're talking about like 3 teams that are like 12 to 13 win threshold teams. If they're not, and then those losses are going to be to each other pretty much. You know what I mean? So
pretty much
it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out too. But who's a couple players off the top of your head that from you, being down south, you name some of the guys that went to your high school and stuff that kind of are under the radar that you think can make a big impact, like in a rookie season type sense?
Impact in a rookie season. That's
a
good question.
I think like it usually is the same positions that we see them at too. We kind of talked about backers making an impact. Maybe a defensive back gets an opportunity to prove himself as well too. But I kind of feel like it's usually the same positions. We're not going to really see an undrafted quarterback come in and throw 25 plus touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions in his rookie season.
I was going to go with Kalen Rutledge, actually, the center from Georgia Tech with the Texans. I think he's going to make a huge impact. They need a guy at the center position. Now, I know they had a guy last year from the Patriots, and they brought him in, and he did well, but nah, go with the young guy, the young scrappy guy.
Was that Bradbury? Was that Garrett?
No, it wasn't Bradbury. I can't remember what his name was, but they brought him in. They brought a guy in from the Patriots. He ended up being the starter. He sat out the previous season and then was healthy enough, I should say, to play last season. But yeah, that'll be interesting to watch and see how he does. Another guy, I'm going to bring up another center potentially that could be starting in the AFC South as a rookie. That'd be Pat Coogan. Pat Coogan is another guy. He got drafted by the Tennessee Titans. And I mean, I remember when he got drafted, I was actually at the Titans facility as well with other media. And everyone, when it happened, they were like, ooh, they got who? Wow. Everyone was like that. That was the expression of everyone in the room. That's how much regard a lot of people have for Pat Coogan. So that's another guy as well. And also I'm staying in the trenches because that's how you win football games, in my opinion. Another guy, Jacksonville, Emmanuel Pregnon. I definitely am very high on him. I think he should start as a rookie, if it happens or not. But I definitely am high on Emmanuel Pregnon as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, some of the under the radar centers, because especially in Tennessee with Cam Ward, it's a pretty important position because you're going to be. I know for the Eagles, and I know every offense is a little bit different, but the reins that Jason Kelce has had, calling the protections out, opposed to, Jalen Hurts had to take on that responsibility when Jason Kelce retired. And that's just kind of what centers do in general. I feel like teams are going to try to throw specific exotic looks at Cam Ward to kind of fluster him because he is so talented too. They're going to be trying to run crazy blitz packages on him. And it's going to be, it's going to be Bob at the end of the day sometimes, where it's going to be, maybe 5-on-5 and then, a nickel's coming out of the, out of the woodworks. I mean, especially when you play
Mhm.
teams like the Steelers, where Jalen could be anywhere on the field at any time, coming from any angle on you, and you have no clue where he's going to blow up your slot receiver or what's going to happen. So it's going to be interesting. But
Mhm.
centers, people act like they're just out there snapping the ball, and there's a lot more that goes into that position than just that.
Right. For sure. For sure.
Yes, sir. So, last couple questions before we get out of here. We've had a nice hour so far and everything too. But what's a good memory that you've had covering the Titans so far?
I would say the most recent memory is Cam Ward's first touchdown pass. I was present on that day. He basically was running around. He starts rolling out to his right. He's going. He points at Alec Iomanner and tells him to go to the opposite side of the field. And Alec Iomanner starts running that way. And Cam Ward is almost like out of bounds almost
Oh
and
yeah, I
throws the
remember that
football
one.
all the way across the field. Alec catches it, and it's his first touchdown. We're watching in the booth like, did we just see that? It
Yeah,
was a catch in a throw that you had to be there to get the gravity of how excellent a throw that was and how it's a play you don't ever expect to see on the football field, especially
yeah.
NFL football field. So
It's
that's
kind
the
of like a
most
mix. He
recent memory.
reminds me of like Steve McNair and Brett Favre at times, where he's just like
Mhm.
when he off any platform, it's like even with Mahomes too. Mahomes does it, but the zip that Cam Ward's able to put on the ball is just kind of different to what some of the other guys are able to do in the NFL, especially this early in his career.
I couldn't believe he threw that one. I was like, wow, he
Yeah,
really threw
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Sometimes you got to take risks, and then there's high risks, high rewards. But sometimes it
Mhm.
works out, especially as a rookie. That's the time where you can freestyle a little bit and do some of those things too. But another guy we
Right.
haven't mentioned yet too, who kind of was like an all-purpose guy that I think was also an All-Pro. I also have a trading card of him that's pretty special too. So I'm hoping that he pans out to be the guy that he is. Shimare Dike. I don't know if I exactly said the
Yeah.
first name correctly, but what do you think the
Mhm.
ceiling is for him? Because he's somebody that we haven't mentioned in the receiving core, but he's kind of a trick of all trades. And if he kind of locks into like one avenue and he still is the guy that he is in the special teams game, I think he could be a big factor to be an explosive playmaker for that Tennessee Titans team.
Well, I will tell you, he's probably going to be right the fourth or fifth wide receiver just because of the
Yeah.
reshuffling of the wide receiver room. But I can imagine them running some gadget plays with him, things like that. I can also look at him being, picking up where he left off in the return game. I know. They'll probably start kicking the ball away from him some. So
Yeah.
that's to be expected. But John Fossil, who is one of the best special teams coordinators in the NFL, will find a way to get him the football. So to me, he's definitely gonna, his biggest thing right now is special teams. But I would not, I'm sorry, be surprised if they start doing a little razzle dazzle with him offensively, kind of mix him in there with maybe a little Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard as well.
Yeah. I like the running back room too. I think a lot of people expected. I don't think a lot of people expected Tony to still be around at this point in time, but he's still there.
Oh,
He's still,
a ton of Titans fans didn't.
yeah, yeah. No, I like Tony a lot. I mean, I'm not a hater. I thought he was really good even when he was on the Cowboys. When I did have to hate him, you know what I mean. But I think, and running back is a very important position. It's an absolute sin to hear about the situation with CJ2K because Adrian Peterson's my favorite running back of all time, favorite player of all time, and in
Mhm.
that era, I mean, you had Deshaun Jackson and you had, the running back version of Deshaun Jackson, which CJ2K is one of the most impactful players. I remember watching him at East Carolina and being like, yo, this dude is legit. Imagine when he gets to the NFL. And then you saw,
Mhm.
they were upsetting teams. And I think they were ranked at East Carolina too when he was in college at one
Mhm.
point because of some of the teams there. And they were ranked like 23rd or something. That was kind of like
Right.
back in the day where Rutgers got all the way up there with the run game that they had. But it's a sad situation, but I know the organization between CJ2K and Derrick Henry, they value that position a lot. So I kind of
Mhm.
thought there was a lot of rumors towards if he didn't go at 3, do you
Oh,
think
there was
Jeremiah
a
Love
ton
was
of
going to
them.
be on the table for them at 4?
Oh yeah, I definitely think he was going to be on the table for them at 4. That would have been very, very interesting because you look at some of the runs that Tony Pollard had last year. They were like maybe like 10-yard runs, things like that. Those might be house calls for Jeremiah Love.
Yeah.
So that's what I was
I
looking
think that
at.
was Tony's issue too, where even with the Cowboys, he had a 1,000-yard rushing season. His longest rush was like not even over 30 yards. So I
Yeah.
think his issue is kind of being a home run hitter at times. They kind of they also had the other dude. I'm drawing a blank. He switched his number to number 2. That they drafted pretty high a couple years back, and they kind of Tajay Spears. And he hasn't
Yeah,
exactly
Tajay.
worked out to the production that they thought they were going to get from him too. But they kind of have a lot of guys that can do a little bit of things too. The offense looks really good out of nowhere for the Tennessee Titans, especially if Cam Ward makes the leap. He's the engine that makes everything go. So if he makes the leap that he needs to in his sophomore season and takes everybody under his wing, I mean, this offense, I mean, this is a team that could probably win, somewhere between like 7 to 8 to maybe 9 games. And then in the AFC South, you never know. That might be enough to, I don't know if that's going to get you into the AFC wildcard picture as a whole, even with the extended a couple years back team that they added that 7th spot, but that could maybe win you the division.
Oh, this year I would say it's probably not going to win the division with Houston and the way they are and the way that Jacksonville could potentially
We have
be.
talked about it pretty much comes down to CJ, Cam, Trevor, and whatever's going on in Indianapolis. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, the quarterback play is definitely going to be, something that decides a lot of different things, along with the trenches. Those are the 2 things that are going to matter most when it comes to the AFC South.
Yes, for sure, for sure. All right, last thing I'll ask you before we get out of here. Actually, I have 2 things I got to ask you. One, you said you were going to set up some Cowboys talk too. Give me some pros about the Cowboys roster right now, and then obviously I'm a Philly, South Jersey guy too, so you got to give me some cons about the Cowboys roster. Do you think Dak Prescott's ever going to reach that ultimate goal of getting over the hump and having playoff success, or do you kind of think in the Dak era that the Cowboys are kind of stuck at where they're at?
I think eventually he's going to have some kind of playoff success. To me, I think he gets a lot of flack for the overall team success when a lot of it, sometimes it's not his fault. Now, I will say, against the 49ers, when they ran out of time, that was all on Dak in terms of that point. But, I think eventually he comes through, he breaks through. If not with the Dallas Cowboys, maybe somewhere else, because it almost seems like the Cowboys fans don't really value him very much anymore. So I think, if he goes somewhere else and wins, it would not surprise me if I see that in his career. But it isn't all on him. I think he'll eventually break through.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not the biggest Dak hater in the world. I actually like him as like a person, but I gotta hate him. You know what I mean? It's only right for me to hate him. He has his moments and flashes, but the consistency is just not there at all. And some of his low lights, are pretty bad. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the Trevor Lawrence effect, where some of his great moments he looks really good, and then some of his other moments he looks really, really bad. It kind of, I remember that game where they lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it was in overtime. He threw that tipped pick that got taken back to the house, and they lost on that play in itself. And it's just like he takes risks at times where they're outside of the realm of his arm talent, which I think is the issue with him at times too. And even with Jalen Hurts not scrambling as much as he used to utilize his legs, I think when Dak ended up having that injury a couple years back, he wasn't as mobile. I mean, not even a couple years back. That's, quite some time now since that injury has happened, but he's not as mobile as he once used to be, which was a huge factor in his early success in his early career.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he definitely has got to, he's got to be selective when running. That's what I would say. Yeah, just because he doesn't have that giddy up anymore that he used to have. But Dak really wasn't, to me, a guy that I really feared running the football, to be honest.
It was more so he's like a big body, he's physical, he can break some tackles, but he's not going to like juke you out and go like 50 or 60, but he could give you a nice, I remember one of probably Dak's best play, in my opinion, his entire career was that playoff play. I forget who they were playing. I think it might have been versus the Seahawks. It was like 3rd and 13, and he took a read option into the house in the playoff game in a huge spot, and he broke a couple tackles and gotten into the end zone. It was one of his biggest plays that he's had in his career. And then I think it might have been either that season or like the next season, he has the play where he doesn't get a play snapped with the running clock at the end of that San Francisco 49ers game. Like that is just you cannot do that in the NFL. That is unacceptable in any nature. And it's pretty interesting that he still is in Dallas with, the lack of success and the only 2 to 3 playoff wins that he has under his belt. But I'm not even trying to harp on him like that. It's just, the reality of the situation. But last thing I'll ask you before I get out of here and we both get out of here, what does a successful season look like for Cam Ward?
Successful season, I give like 25 touchdown passes. I would say maybe at least 25 touchdown passes, maybe 8 to 10 interceptions.
Nailed it
So
exactly how I was thinking. I was saying
yeah.
24-8, like, a 3-1. That probably looks pretty
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, that definitely is it. And also for him, personally, probably an upward trajectory in wins. Maybe looking maybe towards 8 to 10 range. That actually bodes as a successful season and it bodes for a nice building block going into next season for the Tennessee Titans. I'm sorry, the 2027 season for the Tennessee Titans when they will be opening up that brand new Nissan Stadium in
Yes,
Nashville.
yes. But in a weird way, do you kind of hope maybe the wins, if he has a season like that and the wins aren't there, but they're able to add another top draft pick because they only have 4 to 5 to 6 wins? I mean, four would be pretty disappointing, but say they have 5 to 6 or 7 wins in a competitive AFC and that nets them a top 12 pick. That wouldn't be the worst scenario too, because they would be able to build the team up. And then year three, when they really have to get off and he's around 25 to 26 years old, that team could be looking really frightening,
Mhm.
especially with another year of Cardinal Tate.
I would say this with all the energy around the Titans, the new uniforms, and all those different
Yeah,
things, I would say they would need to show some upward trajectory this year because fans are
yeah,
starting to get fed up a little bit. And I can sense it, and but they're excited. But I can still sense some fans that are not necessarily, they're trying to hold back the excitement because they can sense what happened the previous years, getting excited, and then kind of the Titans not necessarily producing how they thought they would.
yes, sir, yes, sir. All right, Mike. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today. We're sponsored by
Mhm.
Recliner Media Network, so shout out to them. We have a little bit of exposure into the Colorado market as well too. So we get a little exposure in Denver, who just made that big trade for Jalen Waddle. Team where if they had a
Mhm.
quarterback, maybe we're talking about them in the Super Bowl last season, but we'll see what
Yep.
happens. But I love that Jalen Waddle trade for them. But before we get out of here, if you want to plug up your podcast and some of the other work that you do and where people can find that at, please do.
All right. Well, of course, you can find Touring the AFC South on all listening platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. And we're also on YouTube at the Mike Patton Network. 2 shows a week, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays around 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. And stay tuned. Go ahead and click that bell because you never know what kind of guest will pop up on the show next.
Yes, sir. And with that being said, thank you for being my guest today, and good luck with everything, and good luck to your Tennessee Titans this season.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.